increasing threats of cyber attacks from nations and the terrorist groups have accelerated the rate of cyber armament by several countries. Some countries have even declared cyber as the fifth domain of warfare after land, air, sea, and space. As a result, many countries have established cyber armies with significant investments in both offensive and defensive cyber capabilities. According to a report by Digital Watch Observatory, said 30 countries have indications of offensive cyber capabilities, while 27 have evidence of offensive cyber capabilities. This includes Nigeria. And so in this session, we'll have a discussion about cyber warfare and terrorism, Nigeria's preparedness. And with me is an esteemed panel of carefully selected experts from both the defense and private sector. So without further ado, let me start with the question. Maybe Tanwa, Ashiru should be the first. Okay, so unlike in kinetic warfare, where military power can be quantified by things like the number of tanks or the number of fighter jets and so on, we do not have a similar thing in the cyber domain. So how do we quantify the cyber power of a nation?
Okay, thank you very much. So cyber power of a nation, if we look at it even from the physical military might, how do we quantify a country that is what they call a power, military power? America, maybe the Navy, the number of fleets they have, the Air Force, the number of aircrafts in their possession, and then, Marine Corps, their specialty, their ability to go into a place, secure it before the Army shows up to do whatever else it is that the Army needs to get done. So we see that in terms of military might, their ability to develop their own military and defense equipment, to deploy that. Sometimes, especially nowadays, how many years of warfare you have under your belt. Okay, so these are some things that we look at and we're able to tell that, okay, this is a country with pretty good military might. Now let's take that to cyber. We're looking at your defense capabilities, your offensive capabilities. How many soldiers do you have in your arsenal, for example? How many more are you still training up? So how many cybersecurity or cyber defense analysts are there? How many, what's their ability and capabilities, their technology, their ability to respond, all of these things. And this is why when you look at it from that point of view, you ask yourself, how much of that do we have set up here? One of the challenges I have with regards to cyber defense in Nigeria is the skill set of the people who are manning a lot of these agencies. You ask yourself, and just, first of all, just so you know, we also see this even in physical combat. In special forces, they tend to put people in charge who are not career special force personnel, and that's a challenge. You can't take someone who's admin and tell them to go and head special forces. Also over here, you take someone who had trained in something completely other than cyber to go head up a cyber department, and that's already setting it up to fail. So when you look at it from that point of view, the capabilities are still far behind, and there's still a lot more room for growth. And I think until we also start developing that capability in country without external help per se, then you know that we've made some progress going forward.
Okay, thank you very much for that robust answer. Okay, I think I will go to the gentleman over there. In an earlier report, I cited that Nigeria was among nations with evidence of offensive cyber capabilities. So how prepared would you say Nigeria is in terms of its defensive cyber capabilities?
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Ignatius, by the way, Defense Space Administration, cybersecurity analyst. So when we were setting up our Security Operations Center at the DSA, the contractor we're working with really, we kept asking questions, and we realized that an answer that kept coming up was, it depends. And that's it about IT, really. It depends. How do you quantify these things, really? How do you know how ready you are? So for the most part, you can have the infrastructure, you can have the capacity or think you can train people, but if you've never been attacked, how do you know that what you've set up is actually working or is in place? So really the way we can test is when we get attacked, really. Oh, okay. During the NSAT protest, one of the things there were a lot of attacks. It may not have been reported, but from the defense, not to go too deeply, the Anonymous group really launched a lot of attacks against Nigeria. Some websites went down. For us in the defense sector, we saw that as a way to really test our abilities, and we think we came out on top, because even though the attacks came, one of the things we realized was none of the defense sites went down, and not for lack of trying from the Anonymous group, and that was because we at the DSA, we carry out regular vulnerability assessments, we carry out regular SAT drills, we test ourselves, essentially. We have these simulations against attacks. Of course, it's not exhaustive, but we try our best to do what we can with the resources we have. DSA is a space agency, so it's not completely focused on just cybersecurity. Yes, and if you're looking at defending or protecting our national interest and security, we're also looking at other directorates, Earth observation, navigation, positioning, and timing. Okay, that all these monies have to go into, budgets has to go into. So with the resources we have, we try to do what we can essentially defend. So under the able leadership of the current Chief of Defense Space Administration, Rear Admiral NACWC, there's a lot of expansion in terms of infrastructure. There's a lot of training ongoing, human capacity development in order to enhance both the offensive and the defensive aspect.
Thank you very much. Okay, and now we go to Simon. Okay. In our use of our offensive cyber capabilities against our enemies, how do we minimize collateral damage? And what should individuals and organizations do to prepare and also avoid being collateral damage?
Good. So, first of all, this topic of cyber warfare and offensive capabilities is extremely important because actually, so yes, we're talking about offensive capabilities, red team, and but actually it's part of defense because or is a counter attack as you're being hacked, as you're being attacked. If you're able to, you can actually, if you identify the source of the attack. The counterattack or the offensive is a way to defend your own I mean to your country and your cyberspace from that attack. So I see it in that light, and in this sense, of course, your cyber lab, your R&D, your malware reverse engineering is extremely important to actually have that capacity and be able to identify the source of attacks and be able to put in place countermeasures, not only to sandbox and to, of course, remedy the attack, but also to counter the offensive. So I see it also as part of the defense, okay, number one. And when talking about defense, really what is critical and what is important is that the recognition that cybersecurity is a service. We're talking about products and tools, and of course infrastructure is important, computing power is important, there's AI, we haven't mentioned, of course, there's artificial intelligence also that is making huge progress in terms of various different applications, whether it's SIEM or event management, etc. But first of all, before talking about the offensive and the cyber warfare, it's really key to have the defensive aspect right, the SOC right, and to measure the quality of service, to provide a very high quality of service. So how do you do that? Of course, I think it was also mentioned, you can simulate attacks, cyber exercises, capture the flag, the more of, like we do in, like the military does, also in the analog world, right? You essentially, the more often you do exercises, cyber exe as we call them, the better your team will be, and the better the maturity level of your team will be. And we spoke earlier about threat intelligence. Threat intel is also key. Why? Because when you go into, and when you have a team that is capable and that can actually dig into the dark web, go in the dark web, you see, you can preempt. You may not be able to prevent attacks, but actually, and by going regularly and by being in the dark web, you see what's coming to you, what's coming at you, because you will identify first of all, you identify your vulnerabilities, and you see what information concerning you or the tools that you're using is being circulated out there and is for sale. And this is one of the ways that the hackers operate. Before they do attack, they put their stuff up for sale and etc. as we know it. So that's my own contribution at this point.
Okay, so I have a final question, and this is open. Anyone of you can answer that. Experts have stressed the importance of multi-stakeholder collaboration in boosting our cyber defense capabilities. And so considering the discrete nature of military cyber operations, what areas do you see the possibilities and utility of collaboration with other sectors, like maybe, example, the private sector? Yeah, you can go ahead, yeah.
I'll pass on the mic. I will not keep it, I promise. No, it's absolutely key because, collaboration is fundamental because you cannot know everything on everything right now. Cybersecurity is very dynamic, and once again, first of all, you have also, whether it's also private hacking groups or parastatal hacking groups, these are not the, Yahoo boys in the hoodie just sitting somewhere and, even hacktivists, they're very sophisticated, very organized, and they have important resources. So and cybersecurity is expensive. We don't necessarily have the teams and the technical and physical resources to confront all the types of attacks, that can come at us. And we're not hacked the same way, whether it's a SCADA system for a power distribution company or a telco or a bank or another critical infrastructure, or in terms of DDoS or other types of attacks. So it's really important to collaborate and to communicate among sectors or among sectoral CERT teams to have the fastest and the best response for that particular attack. So once again, yes, collaboration is fundamental, and sharing of resources, sharing of knowledge, and when we have a particularly a nationwide situation, then we need everybody. When we need everybody to be on the case, all the certs of the country, possibly.
Thank you very much.
Awesome, thanks. I'm going to talk about it from the point of view of collaboration with other countries. Because one of the things that we know about with cyber attacks, there are no borders. It's affecting everyone. And even though there's that initial idea that it's borderless, the truth is any system, any operating system, any computer is being housed somewhere, and it's within a jurisdiction of a country. So I think it's important that at some point, countries do need to come together and make a clear decision about cyber. It is tricky, and I know Mr. Ajijola had mentioned it earlier as well, that there's also the diplomatic aspect. So for example, if you know that you're being attacked and it's coming from non-state actors in China, but then we also know the relations that we have with China. We can't just go and start pointing fingers at them. So diplomacy then has to come in hand. How can we sit down and both agree as countries about what it is that's affecting us in general, and how we can at least, let's all be on the same page that our economy are being hit right now. botnets are not working for you, they're not working for me. Let's collaborate and at least stop those as much as we can. So I think, it's going to be important going forward to decide on that. And then just very briefly, and I read about this the other day and I found it quite interesting. So the ITU, which is the, I think, International Telecommunications Union, had come together and said, let's try and start regulating the internet. And they had to throw it up for a vote because you then had a cluster of countries that said, yes, we're all about that. Let's be involved in regulating the internet. And you had another cluster of countries that said, no, we believe in liberties on the internet. And they stormed out when the votes didn't go in their favor. So at the end of the day, there's so many different interests with different countries. And that is still now what is preventing ideal, policing, so to speak, of the internet and also exacerbating cyber warfare. So until that is handled, you're going to still see countries sort of duking it out with each other. Nobody is going to want to stop, because if I stop, then I'm encouraging, the other country might continue to my detriment. So it's going to be a challenge, but I think that's one area that we really need to look forward to.
All right, thank you very much. I think we've done justice to this topic, so I would like to thank the panelists for their insightful answers, and also thank the audience for listening. Thank you very much.